theoretical physicist at the Black Mesa Research Facility. When a routine experiment goes horribly wrong, you must fight your way through an interdimensional alien invasion and a bloodthirsty military cleanup crew in order to save the science team and the world. So this is Black Mesa. I seem to be reviewing games that have taken years to make, this being the current leader with 14 years of development time behind it. For those who are new to the game, well, this started off as a fan remake of the original classic Half-Life, remade and reimagined using the superior Source engine, well, superior compared to the original Gold Source, and eventually became a commercial product backed by the original developers Valve. The game has been in Steam Early Access since 2015, so let's see if they've succeeded in their efforts and brought us a game worthy of the Half-Life name. When you compare the graphics of the 1998 classic to what the Crowbar Collective team have managed to do with the Source engine, well, you can't help but be impressed. Everything appears to have been updated and improved, from the textures, which are still low res, but a vast improvement from the limited detail of the original, to the lighting, which has been greatly improved with dynamic shadowing and lighting used throughout. The NPC models are also similarly detailed, working with the limitations of the Source engine, but giving good representations of faces. Level design is as good and occasionally as annoying as the original, and the graphical differences in the various sections of Black Mesa help give the locations some character. It all looks very nice for such an old engine. As you can see, the differences in the test chamber section are quite impressive. The lighting especially helps create mood and, dare I say it, immersion. While it is never going to look like today's modern FPS games with RTX ray tracing and 4K textures, it is still very serviceable and does not generally look at all bad. The Zen world in particular has had a complete makeover with loads of colour and alien vegetation and does look really rather pretty. Performance is unlikely to be a concern. On my own system of a Ryzen 7 3700X and RTX 2080 Super, I'm running it in 1080p, 60 FPS was not a problem, and I would generally get a 120 FPS without much of a drop off. Occasionally there was the odd drop below 120, maybe to 80 or so, but this was in really graphically intensive areas of Zen usually. I think the main game was absolutely fine. I did not see any drops there whatsoever. Overall, the visuals are excellent for the limitations in which the developers had to work with. The first thing to note is the game uses different voice actors for the various NPCs compared to the original game. Now, this is not a bad thing because the original game's voices were heavily compressed, and while they were still serviceable and you could hear them, they were quite badly, they were hissing all the time, and it was quite obvious that they were compressed for size purposes. Now, the actors are by and large excellent, and I can't fault them at all. The voices are really quite good. Compared to the original, they still have the same quirkiness to them, and some of the banter you could hear really is quite fun. The game audio in general is actually quite similar to Half-Life 2, which isn't surprising seeing as it uses the same engine. The button presses and other beeps and buzzes are about what you'd expect from this universe. Weapon sounds are particularly good. The meaty sounds of the shotgun and Magnum are quite nice, and the moist thwackness when Crowbar meets alien flesh is as satisfying as ever. The other NPC voices you hear are from the military, and while a little bit repetitive, it does sound good, giving you the distinct feeling of being hunted and flushed out from hiding. Indeed, there are a lot of voices used in the game, little snippets from soldiers, guards and scientists, and they're all telling little bits of the story as you go, all just complaining and generally whinging like you've heard in many other games. It does help make the game alive. You do feel like you're part of that world. It's quite funny to listen to the soldiers talking about you just as you went to come and kill them. Ambient noise is also good, from the hum of machinery to the alien twitterings in Zen. It all does come together to sound very, very atmospheric. On my headset with the Dolby Atmos bit enabled, the audio positioning did get a little bit lost sometimes. I noticed it primarily when I was in the train at the beginning of the game. If you turned your head to the left or the right, the sound coming from the speaker of the woman telling you about having a great day and all that, it did sound a bit odd. You got the occasional positional problem during the game as well, but this is very likely due to an incompatibility with Dolby Atmos and the quite old audio engine. All in all, though, there was no problems at all, really. Just it wasn't an issue. The music is especially epic in this game. It's sparse, you don't get it all the time, and it's only short tracks that play when you enter certain parts of the game, but when the music does get going, you probably should do too. It brings that heart pumping, oh god, something's going to happen, then it usually does, generally ending in your horrible death. Again, overall, the whole thing does sound very, very pleasing indeed. For those who've never had the pleasure of playing the original, well, you are Gordon Freeman, a physicist, theoretical physicist. And after things don't go so well during this experiment he's in which the doors of hell are opened and extra-dimensional beasties are let into play, you have to escape the Black Mesa complex and eventually save the planet from alien invasion. Just another day in the office. The game plays like a typical FPS, opening doors, blasting enemies and staying alive. As a civilian, you're not exactly Rambo. However, due to the rather miraculous Mark IV HEV suit that you don at the beginning of the game, you get to live a little longer than most humans. The HEV has a built-in flashlight, Geiger counter, morphine administer, radio tracking devices and head-up display which tracks health status and weapon ammunition usage, as well as including a weapons management system. The suit also contains an onboard computer that constantly monitors the user's health and vital signs, reacting to any changes in the user's condition and administering what is required. And if that wasn't enough, the suit also has an energy shield system that can be charged at HEV chargers throughout Black Mesa, and while charged, the suit provides greater protection from gunfire and other forms of damage, so it's pretty useful and explains why the game is over 12 hours long and not just 12 minutes. There are plenty of puzzle elements to the game, usually revolving around plugging things in and finding switches and buttons to turn things on. This is all good, but one of the most prevalent aspects of the game is by far the most annoying: its reliance on platform style gameplay. You see, in order to reach some switches or rooms, you have to jump over gaps to get to the other side, and this can often need precision positioning to make it, because it really is accuracy is required in a lot of these jumps. Sadly for Gordon, in this game he has no legs or feet, and therefore it is much more difficult to judge where to jump from. Also on Zen you have a jump pack which allows you to jump a much greater distance horizontally only, you can't go upwards. And while some sections of Zen have obviously been designed to use this jetpack in order to proceed, again the positioning you have to do in order to make these jumps is incredibly fiddly, and on many occasions very, very frustrating. In my opinion, this can detract a little from the rest of the game. It seems to me that the developers of the game wanted to make Zen a bit more challenging, but I think they've made it a little bit too challenging in cases, and while the end result is worth it, getting there, the jumps do make it a little bit more irritating than it probably needs to be. And just as annoying is the collision detection between you and the world itself. There are way too many times I became stuck. I couldn't pass an object because it was apparently in the way. Presumably not having legs again might be the problem. It definitely caused frustration. It's things like trying to go past like a rock or a fence or something along those lines that other times you've had no problem getting over things that are that high. I don't know exactly what it is. It's maybe there's some sort of overhang when you try to jump and it thinks that you're clipping into the item, so it says no, you can't do that. But yeah, it was quite irritating. There's a section in the game where you have to jump on pipes and conveyor belts, And while sometimes that was not a problem, there was the occasional part of that where you found yourself falling into the doom and despair because you got caught up on, well, I can only imagine it was the rail of the conveyor belt that was the problem. So again, I'd like to see these little tiny issues ironed out. I suspect it is just the collision detection, and I'm hoping that'll be fixed in a later patch. Other little problems is that you become attached to moving platforms when you didn't really want to, and that usually involved your horrible death as you were crushed between that and a wall. Yeah, I want to see these sort of things fixed. Other aspects of the game are much better. The combat is fun to play, especially against the military. They are really quite good. The AI, it knows enough to flank you and chuck grenades at you if you're in hiding or try, foxholing. They're not too difficult to kill though, so you'll still be able to pick them off, and the quite varied types of weapon at your disposal makes this a very enjoyable experience. Using your crossbow is a rather satisfying experience as well to kill them, although because it's so slow to load, that does usually mean you're going to get attacked as soon as you try it. You have your pistol, magnum, assault rifle, shotgun and crossbow. That's your main weapons. And then there's the bigger death dealers. You've got your rocket launchers, lasers, what feels like a proton pack right out of Ghostbusters, and an alien which spits out flies right after you shove your hand reluctantly up its rear end. I don't imagine Jeff Dunham has a puppet like this one. Other ordnance includes grenades, claymores, satchel bombs, and, well, alien bugs that you throw and will attack anything in sight, which does unfortunately include you. There is no auto cover system here, no hand holding. In fact, there is no map, compass. This is what I call proper gaming, where everything's left to you, the player, to figure out. Paths are, well, they're generally linear in this game, but in a game with no maps or waypoints, this is probably a good thing. You don't need to be told where to go when it's the only place you can go. The game does a fine job of not feeling too linear, so while it technically is, you do have the option to go in different paths occasionally, and the way that the game world is laid out, it doesn't feel like you're just on a corridor. There are plenty of occasions that you will definitely feel lost, and what do I do now? But eventually you will figure it out. The answers are reasonably obvious once you look around and try and find switches and buttons and plugs and other things, or physics-based puzzles that are quite obvious once you see them, and it will make sense, and you will feel a sense of, yeah, I've done that. The game has been redesigned from the ground up. The developers have stated they kept the spirit and maps of the original game, but have altered and improved what they felt needed fixing. There is a different feel to the old game, that's for sure, but I didn't really feel anything was out of place. Zen has been completely worked over, and it is more or less the team's own work. The old version of Zen, if you weren't aware, was a little bit woeful. It was as if they didn't really want to put too much effort into it originally, so the development team for this game have decided they wanted to make it slightly better. So yes, overall this game is fun to play, and especially if you've never experienced the original Half-Life game, you will probably enjoy the ongoing story as well.